Try to picture American television without MASH star. It's almost impossible, isn't it? That's because the series didn't just entertain, it completely changed what a sitcom could be and how deeply it could affect people. Premiering in 1972, right in the final stretch of the Vietnam War, MASH was set during the Korean War and masterfully mixed sharp humor with genuine heartbreak. Its unforgettable characters wrestled with the ridiculousness of war while showing the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. It very quickly became one of the most beloved shows on television, but behind the camera, things were constantly shifting and evolving. As the writing grew bolder with social commentary and richer character development, tension sometimes flared on set. Several fan-favorite actors eventually made the tough decision to walk away. Were those exits driven by personal reasons, professional goals, or creative disagreements? The real reasons might catch you off guard. Let's take a closer look at what actually happened. The history of MASH, a war story told with heart. There's a lot to cover here, but before we dive into the departures, let's go back to the very beginning and see how this legendary series came to be. Like many of the greatest TV shows ever made, MASH didn't start on television. It started with a book. In 1968, Dr. Richard Hooker, the pen name of Korean War surgeon Richard Hornberger, published MASH, a novel about 3 army doctors. The book was a fictionalized retelling of his experiences as a doctor in a mobile army surgical hospital during the Korean War. Thanks to its unique blend of dark, gallows humor, moments of real human warmth, and unflinching honesty about war's brutality, the novel quickly became a bestseller, and caught the attention of Hollywood. 2 years later, in 1970, director Robert Altman turned the book into a feature film titled MASH Star. It was a biting satirical black comedy, both irreverent and sobering. The movie starred Donald Sutherland as Hawkeye Pierce and Elliot Gould as Trapper John, and it struck a powerful chord with audiences, especially as the Vietnam War weighed heavily on the American psyche. The film became both a critical and commercial hit, winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes and an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, but the true cultural explosion happened 2 years after that, when CBS brought the concept to television as a weekly series, developed by Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds. The TV version of MASH premiered on September 17, 1972. It kept the wartime setting and the offbeat humor but introduced a more serialized, character-driven format that allowed for deeper emotional storytelling. Alan Alda stepped into the role of Hawkeye Pierce and very quickly became the emotional heart of the series. The first season actually struggled quite a bit in the ratings, so much so that CBS nearly canceled the show. But they took a chance, moved it to Saturday nights, and the ratings exploded. From that point on, the show's cultural impact grew massively. MASH broke a lot of rules for its time. It was one of the first American comedies to regularly experiment with format, incorporate real war footage, and even replace a traditional laugh track with the sound of helicopters and surgical tools. Alan Alda, who played Hawkeye, later became a director, writer, and major creative force behind the show, pushing hard for more realism and emotional depth. But as MASH matured, so did its characters. And not every actor was happy with the new direction. Some felt their roles were shrinking or turning into caricatures. Others were dealing with personal challenges or simply wanted to explore different creative paths. Over its 11-season run, MASH saw several major cast changes, but through it all, the show stayed true to its core mission, showing the true cost of war through compassion, sharp wit, and unbreakable human connection. With that in mind, let's dive into the first major exit. An actor whose departure was so unexpected that the writers chose to kill off his character in a moment that shocked the entire country. McLean Stevenson, Henry Blake. If you ask longtime MASH fans which moment hit them the hardest, most will point to the final scene of Season 3's finale, Abyssinia, Henry. It was just one quiet line delivered by Radar, but it changed everything. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. That moment wasn't just shocking, it was groundbreaking. It marked the first time a core sitcom character was killed off suddenly and permanently, and without any warning. But how did we get to that point? McLean Stevenson had been essential to MASH * from the very first episode. As the warm, often overwhelmed commanding officer of the 4077th, Colonel Henry Blake was the perfect counterbalance to the chaos around him. Where Hawkeye and Trapper brought rebellion and sarcasm, Henry brought humanity, sometimes frazzled, sometimes clueless, but always well-meaning. In the early seasons, McLean's performance earned him widespread praise, including a Golden Globe nomination. He was funny, relatable, and deeply loved by fans, but behind the scenes, things were far less harmonious. According to interviews and memoirs from cast members and writers, McLean grew increasingly frustrated with his role. While the show began as a true ensemble comedy, it quickly started centering more and more around Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce. As Alda became more involved in writing and directing, his character took on greater emotional depth and narrative weight. McLean, meanwhile, felt more and more sidelined. So much so that he told People magazine in 1975, "I want to be number one. I want to be the guy carrying the show." At first glance that might sound like ego, but it really wasn't just about ego. McLean had big dreams. He believed he had the charisma and talent to lead his own series. He wanted to be the star, not the supporting player. He saw the power television had, and he wanted to be at the center of it. So, at the end of season 3, McLean told the producers he would not be returning for season 4. Here's where things took a dramatic turn. Traditionally, when an actor leaves a sitcom, the character is written out gently, transferred, reassigned, maybe even married off. But MASH * was never a typical sitcom. Creators Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds saw an opportunity to do something bold and honest. They wanted to remind viewers that MASH * was, at its core, a war story, and in war, not everyone gets to go home. So they made the unthinkable choice. They killed off Henry Blake, the legendary Abyssinia Henry episode built to a joyful farewell. Henry receives his discharge papers, there's celebration, tears, hugs. It feels like a classic happy ending. For 25 minutes, everything seems perfect, then comes the final scene. Like a punch to the gut, Radar walks into the operating room, hat in hand, face pale. The doctors are in the middle of surgery when he quietly delivers the news: Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. What followed was stunned silence. No dramatic music, no laugh track, just the sound of surgical equipment and stunned faces. That moment changed television forever. It was one of the first times a beloved sitcom character was killed off suddenly and permanently, and the raw reactions from the cast were partly real. Only a few people knew the ending in advance. Gary Berghoff, Radar, was the only actor told ahead of time so he could prepare emotionally. The rest of the cast reacted genuinely during that final take. When the episode aired, the response was immediate and overwhelming. CBS received thousands of letters, some praising the show's courage and honesty, others furious that a beloved character was taken away so abruptly. Some viewers even accused the producers of going too far, but Larry Gelbart defended the decision, saying, "We wanted to say that not everybody gets to go home." And they did, powerfully. But what happened to McLean Stevenson after he left? At first, things looked promising. He signed a big deal with NBC, excited to launch his own starring vehicle. He starred in The McLean Stevenson Show, a family sitcom built around his likable charm. It seemed like he was finally going to be the lead, but it was short-lived. The show was cancelled after just one season. His next attempt, Hello, Larry, performed even worse. Despite heavy promotion, it was critically panned and quickly became a punchline. Looking back, McLean later admitted he regretted leaving MASH star. In a 1983 interview with the Los Angeles Times, he said, "I took myself out of the game." It wasn't just that his new shows flopped, it was the realization that MASH * had been a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The cast, the writing, the cultural impact, it was lightning in a bottle. Some of his co-stars, like Alan Alda and Loretta Swit, expressed sadness about his departure, but they also understood his desire to try something new. Others quietly wondered if he had walked away from something truly special too soon. Despite his regrets, McLean continued working in television, making guest appearances and taking on smaller roles. But he never again found the same level of success or emotional connection with audiences that he had as Henry Blake. When McLean passed away in 1996 at the age of 68, tributes poured in from fans and colleagues. Alan Alda remembered him as a wonderful actor and a good man. Gary Berghoff called him a light-hearted spirit who brought joy to everyone around him. Say what you will about McLean, in a strange way, his departure gave MASH * its soul. The irony is that the role he left behind became the most enduring part of his entire career, but if you thought McLean's exit was dramatic, Wayne Rogers' departure was something else entirely: quiet, complicated, and filled with behind-the-scenes tension. Wayne Rogers, Trapper John. While McLean got a tearful on-screen farewell and a moment that became television history, Wayne Rogers simply disappeared. One season he was there, the next season he was gone. No goodbye scene. No explanation. No closure. Why? Let's just say things weren't as smooth behind the camera as they appeared on screen. To understand what happened, we need to go back to the beginning. Wayne Rogers played Trapper John McIntyre, one half of the original comedic duo that defined MASH's early seasons. He and Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce were the heart of the 4077th, fast-talking, rule-breaking, mischievous best friends. Their chemistry was electric. Audiences loved watching them trade banter, pull pranks, and face war together with unshakable loyalty. It felt like a wartime version of The Odd Couple, only with scalpels and sarcasm, but behind the laughs, tension was quietly building. Wayne had signed on believing MASH * would remain a true ensemble show, with equal screen time and story focus for the core cast, but as the series progressed, the spotlight increasingly shifted toward Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce. It became clear that Hawkeye wasn't just a co-lead anymore, he was becoming the moral center, the emotional anchor, the driving force of the show, and once Alda started contributing heavily to writing and directing, the shift became even more obvious. At first Wayne didn't mind Alda's growing success. In fact, the two were reportedly friendly off-set, but naturally, Wayne began to feel more and more sidelined. Alda's character was maturing, gaining emotional depth. The other characters, especially Trapper, started feeling stuck in their original mold. As Wayne later explained in interviews, it wasn't purely about ego, it was about storytelling integrity. He once said, "Trapper didn't have much to do. He was one of two buddies, and then he became the guy who nodded at everything Alan said." Unlike McLean, who made a public exit and received a dramatic send-off, Wayne chose a quieter path. He simply decided not to renew his contract after season 3. The producers didn't even know he was officially gone until shortly before season 4 began filming. Here's where it gets even more unusual: Wayne's contract with the show had never actually been formally signed. He had been working on a handshake deal the entire time. So when the producers threatened to sue him for breach of contract, they had no legal ground to stand on. He hadn't broken anything, he had simply walked away from a show he no longer believed was giving his character room to grow. His departure was abrupt, and it left the writers scrambling. As a result, they had to rewrite the opening of season 4. In the first episode they simply explained, off-screen, that Trapper John had been discharged while Hawkeye was away on leave. The audience reaction was brutal. First Henry, now Trapper. Was this even the same show anymore? To make matters worse, there was no farewell scene. No going away party. No emotional goodbye. The producers scrambled to do damage control. In Trapper's place came Mike Farrell as B.J. Honeycutt, a character written to be more grounded, emotionally complex, and perhaps less rebellious than Trapper had been. With this change, the entire dynamic of the show shifted immediately. The buddy comedy edge softened. The tone became more introspective, but here's the irony: many fans, and critics, believe MASH actually grew deeper and stronger after Trapper left. While some still prefer the earlier seasons, others argue the show reached new emotional heights once it moved beyond the original duo. Wayne, meanwhile, didn't disappear from the spotlight. After MASH, he appeared in several TV shows and films, but eventually took a completely different path, becoming a successful financial investor and commentator. Wayne was incredibly smart. He had studied history at Princeton and later built a very successful career on Wall Street. By the 1990s he was a regular panelist on Fox News' Cash In, discussing economics and policy. He made millions, not from acting, but from savvy investing. Still, he never fully walked away from Hollywood. He did TV movies, took recurring roles, and even joked about his time on MASH*. In later interviews, despite the suddenness of his departure, there didn't seem to be any lasting bad blood with the cast. In fact, Alan Alda once said, "Wayne is one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. I missed him a lot when he left." That friendship remained intact, and when Wayne passed away in 2015 at the age of 82, Alda tweeted, "He was smart, funny, curious, and dedicated. We made a pact to give each other a hard time for the rest of our lives, and I'm sorry we won't have the chance." Although Wayne left MASH*. At the height of its early popularity, without fanfare or a big send-off, he's still remembered fondly by fans who loved Trapper's playful grin and easygoing charm. We've covered actors who left to chase new opportunities, but what about those who left because the show itself became emotionally overwhelming? Gary Berghoff, Radar O'Reilly. It's almost ironic, considering he was the emotional heart of the unit, but Gary Berghoff didn't leave MASH*. With celebration or fanfare. He left quietly, painfully, and for reasons far deeper than most fans ever realized. To viewers, Gary was Radar O'Reilly, the wide-eyed company clerk with almost supernatural intuition, always clutching his teddy bear while carrying the weight of war on his young shoulders. Radar could hear helicopters long before anyone else. He had a sweet, almost childlike innocence that softened the harsh edges of the 40-70-70. While Hawkeye and Trapper broke rules and Henry Blake fumbled through leadership, Radar was the glue, the soul, the emotional heartbeat of the camp. But behind that soft voice and nervous smile was an actor slowly breaking under the pressure. Gary was actually the only actor to reprise his role from the original 1970 MASH*. Film. In the movie, Radar was more mischievous, even a little sleazy. But on television, Gary reshaped him into something unforgettable, a symbol of lost innocence amid the brutality of war. His performance was so iconic that many considered him irreplaceable, and yet, by season 7, cracks were showing. Gary was struggling, both personally and professionally. The grueling production schedule of MASH*, combined with his own perfectionism, began to wear him down. He battled anxiety and depression, issues that weren't widely discussed at the time but deeply affected his ability to cope with filming demands. There was also the pain of being away from his family. By the late 1970s, Gary was married with a young daughter. The long hours on set meant he was missing huge chunks of her early childhood. He later admitted that missing those years felt like a mistake I never stopped regretting. In a 2018 interview, co-star Mike Farrell recalled, "Gary had emotional problems. He always felt that he wasn't getting the attention or appreciation he deserved. But I think he underestimated how much we all respected him." There were also contract disputes. Gary wanted better pay, more flexibility, and fewer episodes so he could balance his personal life. the producers, knowing how central Radar was to the show, tried to accommodate him as best they could. At one point they even gave him more time off and reduced his appearances per season, but it still wasn't enough. Emotionally, he was finished. So in season 8, Gary made the painful decision to leave MASH for good, but unlike Wayne Rogers, the show didn't let him simply disappear. Radar received a 2-part farewell episode titled Goodbye, Radar. One of the most emotional storylines in television history. In it, Radar returns from leave to find the 4077th falling apart without him. At first he tries to fix everything, just like always. But eventually he realizes it's time to go home. His mother needs him, the family farm is struggling, and perhaps Radar has finally grown up. The final scene is almost completely silent. Radar walks away, silhouetted against the Korean sky, leaving his teddy bear behind on Hawkeye's bunk. That moment was devastating. It said everything the show couldn't put into words, and the audience felt that loss deeply, because watching Radar leave felt like saying goodbye to innocence itself. After MASH*, Gary took a long step back from acting. He made a few appearances, including a short-lived spin-off called Walter*, where Radar becomes a rookie cop, but it never caught on. Eventually he chose to leave Hollywood behind completely. He turned to painting, wildlife conservation, and inventing. Yes, inventing. He held several patents, including one for a fishing tackle system. His love for nature became a refuge, a way to heal from the pressures of fame and the emotional toll MASH*, had taken on him. Gary later explained that he left for 2 reasons: my family and burnout. I wanted to pick up the pieces of my life. And who could blame him? Today Gary lives a quiet life. He rarely gives interviews. He doesn't chase the spotlight. But every now and then fans will spot him at a convention or read a rare quote, and they remember the kid with the soft heart and big ears who could hear choppers before anyone else. Now let's talk about the man who played one of television's most hilarious villains, Larry Linville, Frank Burns. It's almost impossible to imagine early MASH*, without Major Frank Burns, the rigid, petty, self-important surgeon audiences love to hate. Played to perfection by Larry Linville, Frank was the ideal comic foil, sycophantic, obsessed with rules, secretly involved with Major Houlihan, and deeply insecure. But as the show evolved, Frank's one-dimensional villainy began to feel out of place. While other characters gained depth and complexity, Frank remained stuck in the same loop, his insecurities never challenged, his prejudices never examined, and Larry, an actor with far more range than the role allowed, started feeling the strain. By the end of season 5, Larry made a firm decision: he would not renew his contract. In his own words, he had taken the character as far as he could. He wasn't fired. He wasn't pushed out. He simply chose to walk away, recognizing that MASH*, had outgrown Frank's limited role. The ripple effect was huge. With Frank gone, the show was free to explore more nuanced moral conflicts. There was no longer a need for a cartoonish villain. Comedy could now come from irony, character growth, and human truth rather than slapstick cruelty. In many ways, Larry's exit marked a creative turning point, helping elevate MASH*, from very good to truly legendary. But fans still felt the loss. For 5 seasons Frank had been the punchline, and the pressure valve. His departure forced the series to rethink its entire rhythm, and while he was written out off-screen, receiving a cushy stateside promotion, his absence was deeply felt in the show's DNA. After MASH*, Larry continued working in television and film, but he never again landed a role as iconic or unforgettable as Major Frank Burns. Not only was Frank written out, another character was written in to help fill the void he left behind: David Ogden Stiers, Charles Emerson Winchester. If Frank Burns was the cartoonish villain, Charles Emerson Winchester III was something far more interesting, a slow-burn antagonist with real depth, introduced at the beginning of season 6 to replace Frank. Winchester couldn't have been more different, cultured, brilliant, arrogant, and deeply private. He wasn't just a foil, he was a genuine challenge to Hawkeye, to BJ, and to the entire tone of the show. And David Ogden Stiers played him with exquisite restraint and subtlety. At first Winchester came across as pompous and insufferable. But over time, layers began to appear. He wasn't heartless, just guarded. He wasn't cruel, just proud. Beneath the opera records and fine wine was a man quietly reckoning with the brutal reality of war, one patient at a time. Unlike several other actors, David didn't leave mid-series. He stayed until the very last episode, leaving not in protest, but with poetic closure. His final scene, teaching Chinese POWs to play Mozart, remains one of the most hauntingly beautiful moments in television history, and that was the power of Winchester. He wasn't there to be liked. He was there to remind us that war breaks everyone, even those who believe they're too refined to be touched by it. When offered the chance to join the short-lived spin-off after MASH, David politely declined. He explained that Winchester's arc was complete. In his words, Winchester had said what he needed to say. After MASH*, David went on to voice memorable Disney characters and appeared in numerous films and TV shows. In 2009 he publicly came out as gay during an interview with the website Gossip Boy, saying, "I am gay. Very proud to be so." He explained that he hadn't come out earlier in his career because he feared it might hurt his opportunities, especially while doing voice work for Disney and appearing in mainstream television and film. At that time, there was genuine concern that being openly gay could lead to typecasting or lost roles. Despite keeping his personal life private for most of his career, he was deeply respected in the industry for both his talent and his dignity. He passed away in 2018 at age 75 from bladder cancer, but his legacy lives on, not just in his performances, but in the quiet courage it took to live his truth on his own terms. But we can't finish this video without giving proper respect to the women of MASH*. While the show was largely centered around its male characters, the women played essential roles, and none more important than Major Margaret "Hot Lips" Houlihan. The women of MASH*, especially Major Margaret Houlihan, in a war zone filled with men using humor to survive the darkness. The women of MASH*, had an even tougher job, being seen and respected, and no woman faced a steeper climb, or underwent a more remarkable transformation, than Major Margaret "Hot Lips" Houlihan, played brilliantly by Loretta Swit. When MASH*, began, Margaret was written almost as a punchline. Her nickname, Hot Lips, came straight from a gag in the original film, reducing her to a stereotype. She was strict, rule-obsessed, and often the target of ridicule, but Loretta Swit refused to let Margaret stay shallow. Season after season she infused the character with intelligence, strength, vulnerability, and real humanity. By the final seasons, Margaret wasn't just tolerated, she was respected. She had become a fully realized, complex woman, a decorated officer, a highly skilled head nurse, and one of the few characters who openly questioned the cruelty of war while still performing her duties with precision and professionalism. Loretta once said in an interview, "I wanted her to be a woman of substance." And she absolutely was. Interestingly, while many male actors left MASH*, over the years, Loretta stayed for all 11 seasons. She was one of only 4 actors to appear in both the pilot and the finale, while other female characters, like Lieutenant Ginger Bayless or Nurse Cutler, came and went. Margaret remained and evolved. In a show where war stripped everyone down to their rawest selves, Margaret stood tall, and thanks to Loretta's persistence and talent, the only woman in the opening credits made sure the men didn't carry the entire show alone. What actors did we miss in this video? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, click play on the next video on your screen. You're going to love it, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Smiling face with smiling eyes.